A class 12? Zavaro peered down at the creatures on the scry screen. They didn't look like much. Small, furry, hoppy things. They had big ears and big feet and big teeth, but they still looked harmless. He watched one chew fearfully on thin stalks of green plant matter. It doesn't look like a class 12 to me. Oh, it is, Rygovax assured him. Rygovax was a Stonvar, one of the deadliest sapient carnivores in the galaxy. 20 meters long, with thick green scales and wide leathery wings. The wings were functional, but not nearly strong enough to lift Rygovax's bulk with physics alone. Rygovax relied on Majin to fly, just as he used it to spew fire from his mouth. Class 12 at least, maybe class 13. His voice was low, resonant. Class 13 Deathworlds don't exist, Zervaro told him. That's just a story to scare hatchlings. Class 13 Deathworlds aren't officially acknowledged, Rygovax corrected. That doesn't mean they don't exist. Well, even if they do, this world isn't one of them. Zavaro pointed to the furry things with one of his upper scythe limbs. Look at those things, Rygovax. They couldn't hurt a Fliznak. That's a rabbit, Zavaro, Rygovax said patiently. A fast-breeding prey animal. Mundane. They aren't supposed to be dangerous. Then why does it have such big teeth? Zavaro demanded. A shadow and a flash of feathers descended on the creature. Claws grasped the rabbit and hauled it into the sky. You know what? Never mind. Zavaro used his lower set of hands to have the scry screen follow the flying thing. It was fierce enough, he supposed, but nothing compared to the creatures Zavaro had faced. He was a Zokhar, a species renowned for their survivability. His exoskeleton was stronger than steel, and he could lift 30 times more than his considerable weight. A pair of wings granted him limited flight, and his scythe arms could be imbued with Majin to slice through any material. He was also one of the few species that could breathe most atmospheres, and he could ignore extreme temperatures and most forms of radiation. Some kind of hawk, I think, said Rygovax. Avian predator, also mundane. How do you know that? Zavaro asked. I've been here before. The Stonvar's eyes narrowed. Wisps of smoke trailed out of his nostrils. Before the planet was quarantined. Trust me, it's class 12. I don't think it is, Zavaro argued. We've been scrying for hours, and all we've found is Mundies. He placed one of his lower manipulator arms on the scry crystal. Maybe we should look nearer to the humans. Don't! Rygovax snapped. Zavaro jerked his hand off the scry crystal. Don't even think it, the Stronvar warned. They'll know. Zavaro swiveled his antennae in suspicion. What do you mean they'll know? Rygovax's aura was swirling, disjointed. All Zavaro could read off him was fear and bad memories. It's a scryer. Divination is almost impossible to detect. Not to humans. Rygovax twitched his wings. Even mundane humans are sensitive, connected. They can pull knowledge out of the vast instinctively, know things for no reason, feel things that are about to happen, premonitions and hunches, delivered subconsciously and without effort. More importantly, he glowered at Navarro, humans can feel when someone is watching them. That's not possible, Zavaro told him. They're humans, Rygovax growled. Possible does not apply. Then I don't know what to tell you, Rygovax. Zavaro folded his lower appendages. All the animals we've scryed are mundane, and what little technology we've glimpsed is physics-based. I haven't seen a single indicator of Majin. I think Gaia might be a dead zone. It's not, said Rygovax. It can't be. I was there. The Majin was so thick you'd choke on it. You couldn't walk a meter without tripping over a spirit or monster or god.
hydras and krakens, giants and yokai and manticore. There were so many Majin wielders, it's a miracle the Mundis survived at all.
Sounds fun, Zavaro said dubiously. The scry screen wasn't showing anything like that. I'm surprised you left.
Had to.
Rygovax shook his head.
Too dangerous.
Zavaro's antennae froze. Too dangerous for Rygovax?
I've never heard you say such a thing. It's the most lethal place I've ever been, Rygovax said seriously. And I've been places.
The most lethal? The Zokar's doubt increased. He pointed at the scry screen.
This world, with the rabbits? You have no idea.
Rygovax snorted fire.
My people colonized Gaia nearly 200,000 years ago. We intended to conquer Gaia as we had conquered 1,000 worlds before it. I take it that didn't happen, Zavaro asked mildly. It did not.
More smoke leaked out of the Stonavar.
No matter how much we fought, no matter how mighty we became, it was never enough. We could contend with the monsters, even with some of the gods. But the humans?
He shook his head.
The humans were too much. Sorcerers?
Zavaro guessed.
If only,
the Stonevar harumphed.
Oh, the Majin wielders took their toll, but most of my people were slain by normal humans. Mundanes?
Zavaro's antennae quivered in shock.
Mundanes,
Rygovax confirmed.
Mundanes with pointy sticks.
You can't be serious.
I wish I wasn't, said the Stonvar. They used arrows and lances mostly, the occasional ballistae, all just pointy sticks. Most of the time, the humans didn't even have a wielder to aid them. They killed Stonvar with nothing but numbers and physics and ferocity.
Rygovax glowered at the scry screen.
We lost so many in that cursed place. The last straw was when our leader made a deal with a human. He was a powerful wielder, and he convinced us to make one last push. Our last chance to conquer the humans. We destroyed most of a country, but only a few hundred of us survived. We declared the colony a failure after that. Most of us evacuated. The few that refused are dead by now.
Mundanes with sticks killed Stonvar? Zavaro didn't want to believe it.
It's ridiculous, I know, Rygovax admitted. A mundane human wields no magic. They're slower and weaker than most animals, and almost as primitive. You'd think them easy prey. They are not. Humans are terrifying creatures. Their urge to dominate equals my own. They use teamwork and cunning to bring down foes they should never dare to face. I've seen mundane humans defeat beings even I wouldn't challenge. I've seen them strike down gods.
Is that why Gaia was quarantined? Zavaro asked quietly. The Stonvar's story did not match what Zavaro had seen on the scry screen, but he'd never known Rygovax to lie. He'd certainly never seen him afraid. If Rygovax was so certain the humans were dangerous, Zavaro would take the warning to heart.
Because of the humans? I don't know, Rygovax admitted. Gaia was a Class 12 Deathworld when I left, but it wasn't restricted. The world was forbidden a century later. I never learned why.
I think I can guess. Zavaro's antennae twitched. The planet down there is nothing like you described. No monsters, no wielders. It's not a Class 12. I don't think it's a death world at all.
That can't be, the Stonvar denied. It's only been 1,500 years. Where could they have gone?
Maybe the humans killed them all with pointy sticks. Zavaro said it as a joke, but Rygovax frowned, considering it.
No, the Stonvar decided. No matter how many they killed, The vast would make more. The Majin was so dense that creatures were formed out of dreams sometimes.
Well, they aren't being formed now, the Zokar was certain. I think Gaia has been afflicted, like the others. His scythe limbs twitched. Maybe earlier than the others. Maybe this is where it started.
Maybe it was the humans.
Rygovax glared at the scry screen. Smoke was leaking out of his mouth as well as his nostrils. We need to get closer, Zavaro decided. We've seen all we can from here. Rygovax growled in agreement.
Closer, but not too close. Keep us behind Mars.
At Zavaro's twitching antennae, he clarified.
The fourth planet from the star. I don't want them to see us.
Zavaro nodded seriously. He carefully maneuvered his ship until the fourth planet was between it and Gaia. His vessel, the Breath of Majin, was the finest stealth craft his people had produced. Hiding behind a planet should be unnecessary. Zavaro did it anyway. When a Stonvar advised caution, you paid heed or you died. It took 11 hours to position the Breath of Majin so that Mars would block Gaia's view. It took another 31 hours to reach the fourth planet's orbit. Rygovax spent the time flicking through the scry screen, looking for signs of Majin. Zavaro spent the time worrying. Gaia was a quarantined world. Coming within 10 light-years of the Forbidden Planet carried an automatic death sentence. Patrol ships and automated detection systems ranged through the area around the boundary, with scryers and seers and spirits all working together to make sure no one slipped through. Zavaro had pushed his stealth systems and his magic to the limit to arrive here undetected. He did not believe he would escape detection on the way out. It didn't matter. The Zokar was out of options. Rygovax and his mad plan were the only chance Zavaro's people had. Checking Majin levels, Zavaro intoned as he worked the scry crystal. Ambient Majin is at... what?
What do you mean, what?
Rygovax asked irritably.
How much Majin is out there?
Almost none. Zavaro focused the scry on the planet in front of him. I don't understand. The planet's core is iron, nickel, and sulfur. The iron content in the soil is high. Mars should be brimming with Majin. Rygovax positioned his head over Zavaro's shoulder, eyeing the readout.
There's less Majin here than there was in deep space. It's almost as if...
The Zokar could smell smoke coming out of the Stonvar. As if something is siphoning the Majin, Zavaro finished for him, or nullifying it somehow.
What of Gaia?
Rygovax reached past Zavaro and touched the scry screen. The human planet slid into view. Same readings, Zavaro reported. The human world isn't quite a dead zone, but it's close.
Is the core still iron?
The Stonvar demanded. Zavaro checked.
Yes, iron and nickel. Superheated and spinning. It should be radiating a massive amount of energy.
It isn't. Rygovax let out a breath.
I'm sorry, Zavaro. We were fools to come here.
Maybe, the Zokar admitted. Gaia isn't a death world anymore, is it?
No,
Rygovax said it quietly.
There are no monsters, no magic.
Just like the others. Zavaro's antenna drooped. I'd hoped.
So did I.
The Stonvar's voice was thick. He cleared his throat.
Well, it's too late now. If we are going to be executed for breaching the forbidden, we might as well learn what we can.
Learn what? Zavaro was bitter. This world is nearly mundane. Whatever happened here, it's already over.
Perhaps.
Rygovax touched the scry ball.
But that doesn't mean the wielders are all gone. If we can find Morgan, she can tell us what happened.
Morgan? Zavaro felt out the Stonevar's agitated aura.
Who is Morgan? A human wielder,
Rygovax growled.
Brilliant, highly knowledgeable. If anyone knows what's happening to the machine, it will be her. Oh, good.
Zavaro wasn't getting his hopes back up, but at least there was a plan.
Do you think she'll still remember you? I hope not,
Rygovax snorted.
We were mortal foes,
he sighed.
But she probably will.
The scry screen flickered from view to view, but no human wielder appeared. Rygovax growled in frustration.
We'll try Woden next. Ready your defenses, little Zokkar. The father of the Aesir is not fond of my kind. You think he'll attack?
Zavaro guessed.
If he does, he'll kill me first.
The Stonvar closed his eyes and let out a breath.
You'll need to talk very fast if that happens.
Rygovax's warning was unnecessary. Woden was not to be found. Rygovax moved on to the next person on his list, and the next. The Stonevar searched and searched, but found no one. The wielders he knew were gone.
Now what?
Zavaro asked.
I don't know.
Rygovax turned and spat fire.
I refuse to believe every human wielder is dead. They either left or they're hiding. The result is the same either way, Zavaro told him. If we can't find them, we can't ask for help. I know.
The Stonevar's aura seethed.
Perhaps we should contact the Mundys.
Zavaro flinched at the way Rygovax's aura flared.
I know they're dangerous, but they're also the only sapients we can talk to. Maybe they know something.
I can assure you they do not. The voice came from behind Zavaro. He turned, scythe arms glowing as he drew from the Majin. There was a human on his ship. The human reclined in a chair of brown leather. A small round table sat next to him. He sipped steaming liquid from a small cup with a small handle, utterly unconcerned with Zavaro's glowing scythe arms. Zavaro drew harder on the Majin. He called up his magic, strengthened his exoskeleton. A quick spell increased his speed, and the Zokkar prepared to leap. Rygovax's tail barred his way.
Don't,
said the Stonvar. His voice was steady, but his aura lashed with fear. Yes, said the human, don't. The human's voice was a rich baritone, smooth and amused. His eyes were black and his hair was white. He wore blue pants and a black shirt. The shirt had a picture of a skull with a pair of crossed spoons below it. Below the spoons were the words, Serial Killer. Rygovax stepped closer to the human. He dipped his head in a regal nod.
Greetings and be welcome. My name is Rygovax. The Zokkar beside me is Zavaro. We are pleased to have you as a guest on our ship. May we offer you some refreshment?
The human responded with a chuckle. Nice try, but I do not accept your hospitality. You are trespassers, and I will not grant you the protection of rights as a host. He placed his cup on his little table. You will explain yourselves, and you will die. Zavaro's antennae twitched.
Don't you mean we'll explain ourselves, or we will die?
I said what I said. The human steepled his fingers. Zavaro reached out with his senses, trying to feel the aura of this new wielder. The human raised an eyebrow, then spoke to Rygovax. Your friend isn't very polite, is he?
Stop it!
The Stonvar hissed at Navarro. He turned back to the human, voice placating.
My apologies. Zavaro has never been to Gaia. He doesn't know the etiquette.
The man's eyebrows raised a little higher. You didn't think to teach him? Rygovax said nothing. You should have, said the human. A blaze of light surrounded the man. Overwhelming pressure crushed Zavaro to the ground. Divine pressure. The human wasn't a human at all. He was a god. The pressure vanished. The god retrieved his cup and sipped his drink. Zavaro picked himself up. His body was trembling. His spells of strength and quickness were gone. His scythes glowed no longer. Rygovax spoke. Oddly, his aura had calmed. The fear was still there, but the Stonvar had regained his composure.
Speaking of etiquette, we have given our names, but you have not offered yours. How should we address you?
The god ignored the question. How interesting. He set his cup back down. Most people become more afraid when they learn what I am, not less. He hummed. I was a mortal once. I still think of myself as human. Rygovax's fear spiked again. The deity smiled. Ah. Rygovax wrestled his aura back under control. I see.
Who?
Zavaro wheezed.
Who are you?
The god's eyes flicked to the Zokar. The smile faded. You may address me as Gwydion. Rygovax bowed low.
It is an honor to meet you, Lord Gwydion.
Zavaro copied him. I'm sure it is. Gwydion nodded graciously. Even though you've never heard of me. He smiled again. But I've heard of you, Rygovax. You must be desperate indeed to have returned to this world.
We come seeking aid,
the Stonvar told him. Desperate indeed, the god repeated. Maybe I'll give Morgan your head when we're done here. I think she'd like it very much.
Morgan?
Rygovax perked up.
Is she here? Can I speak to her?
No. Gwydion sipped his cup. She's in a place you cannot reach.
Can you send her a message?
The Stonvar pressed. You're asking a favor? The god's eyebrows rose. You do know I'm here to kill you, right?
It doesn't matter, said Rygovax. My life was forfeit the moment I returned to this place.
Gwydion set his cup down and rested his chin in his hand. You are interesting. His gaze settled on Zavaro. And you? Will you forfeit your life to send a message to this creature's most bitter enemy?
You're going to kill us anyway, Zavaro told him. Will you do it or not?
Gwydion laughed. You know, I think I like you too. He leaned forward with a friendly expression. I'll consider your request, but I need context. He looked in his cup, then grimaced. And another cup of tea. The smile disappeared, replaced with a look that chilled Zavaro's blood. Wait here. Do nothing. Do not mistake my curiosity for kindness. The god disappeared. Gwydion reappeared a few minutes later with a fresh cup of tea. He pulled a lever on his leather chair. The bottom of the chair folded out and up, propping the god's feet. All right, I'm ready. Tell me why you're here. Rygovax and Zavaro looked at each other. Rygovax nodded at Zavaro. The Zokar stepped forward.
We seek aid, Lord Gwydion.
Just Gwydion is fine. The god waved his title away. I'm not really ruling anything these days.
Right,
Zavaro started again.
My people need help.
His antennae dropped.
Not just mine, either. 100 worlds are dying, and we don't know how to stop it.
Dying? Gwydion cocked his head. Dying how?
The same way yours is,
said Rygovax. Earth isn't dying, Gwydion told him. It's just changed.
My world is changing too, said Zavaro. The Majin is fading. There's less of it every day. The energy isn't responding as it should. Our magic is becoming unreliable. Spells and rituals are giving unexpected results, or failing to work at all. My species can survive without Majin, Gyrovax added. His can't. We estimate his planet will be uninhabitable within 3 years.
Strange. Gwydion sipped his tea. Your people are evacuating, I assume?
We are, Zavaro confirmed, but that will only delay the inevitable. This isn't just happening to Zirva. It's everywhere. The effect has been growing for 6 centuries, said Gyrovax. Some worlds have been hit harder than others, but the Majin is fading everywhere we look.
He shook his head.
If this continues, the whole of reality could become a dead zone.
Gwydion frowned. That's not good.
We don't know the cause, Zavaro continued. Our greatest sages and scientists have studied it. We've run every test we could think of. The iron is emitting less Majin, but we don't know why.
Not just iron, Gwydion cut in. Gold, silver, even adamantine. We can't figure out why the energy is behaving erratically either. He shook his head. It's like the laws of reality itself are changing.
There's one thing we do know.
Zavaro leaned towards the god, scythes half raised.
A pattern. Whatever this change is, the effect gets stronger the closer you get to Gaia.
Gwydion met the Zokar's eyes. He set down his cup and lowered his footrest. He sat up in his chair. He said, Shit.
You know something, don't you?
Rygovax accused. I suspect something, said the god. He was suddenly standing. His chair and table disappeared. Do you have evidence? Data? Zavaro nodded sharply.
We do.
He pointed with a scythe.
Everything we know is in the ship's computer.
Show me. The next few hours were an exercise in patience. Gwydion and Zavaro pulled every scrap of data out of the breadth of Majin's database. Sheets of paper appeared as the god scribbled notes furiously with a golden pen. He questioned Rygovax constantly as he read. The Stonvar answered as best he could, but he was no scientist. Zavaro knew even less. Eventually the god looked up. He noticed Zavaro was drooping. The Zokar had been awake for nearly 50 hours. He'd been using Majin to keep himself functional, but his ship had a limited and carefully rationed supply. He couldn't keep it up for much longer.
Go to sleep, the god ordered. Both of you. I'll have more questions tomorrow. You can't expect us to leave you alone in our ship,
Zavaro protested. Rygovax gave him a look.
Zavaro, Gwydion chided, I'm probably going to kill you in the morning. Are you really that worried about leaving me alone with a computer?
Zavaro hissed irritably.
Yes.
He wished he had eyelids so he could glare at the being. Most of Azokar's non-verbal communication came in the form of pheromones, and he doubted the deity could smell them. Gwydion sighed. He raised a hand. I, Gwydion Fabdon, will not use your ship's functions for any purpose other than research without permission from you or Rygovax. I will also conduct myself as a guest in your ship until you and Rygovax wake from your sleep or 12 hours have passed. This I swear on my honor and my power. The god's oath rippled through the ship. Zavaro swayed with the force of it. Rygovax grunted.
Good enough. Thank you, Lord Gwydion.
It's just Gwydion, the deity reminded him. He waved them away.
Go away and sleep. I'm trying to read.
Zavaro returned to his chambers. He curled up in his nest. He was going to die. If the god didn't kill him, his own people certainly would. He'd tried to live. He'd been as careful as he could. But Rygovax had warned him this would be a one-way trip. Ah, Rygovax, Zavaro sighed. None of this was the Stonvar's problem. His people were uncomfortable, but they would live. Rygovax had risked everything for him. He'd thrown his life away, returned to the only place he feared for Zavaro and Zavaro alone, because they were friends. Zavaro hadn't had many friends. He'd certainly never had one risk his life for him. It should have been a nice feeling. It wasn't. Had they been wrong to come here? Had they thrown their lives away for nothing? Had Zavaro sacrificed himself and his best friend for a hope that would never come? The human god had listened, but would he help? Despite his doubts, Zavaro fell asleep quickly. He slept for a long time. Too long. Gwydion's 12-hour promise not to harm them had expired. The Zokar groggily forced down some food. He felt weak. Why did he feel weak? He tried to pull some Majin into himself and found the answer. The magic. The magic was almost gone. Zavaro stumbled out onto the bridge. Gwydion was still at the computer. Piles of scribbled-on paper sat next to him. The god looked up, then narrowed his eyes.
"The Majin is thin in here," he said. "I can help if you give me permission to access the ship."
"I would appreciate it," said the Zokar. "You have permission."
Very well. The god placed his hand on a control crystal. Majin flooded through the ship. Zavaro gasped in relief. Gwydion gave him a concerned look.
"You should be more careful, you know. Granting permission without qualifiers is a dangerous thing to do."
Zavaro shrugged.
"Aren't you going to kill us anyway?"
"Fair point,"
the god conceded.
"It's still good advice."
Rygovax lumbered onto the bridge. The Stonvar looked as haggard as Zavaro felt. He plopped down on the deck with a sleepy growl.
"You have to be careful when you negotiate with wielders. They'll stick to the letter of an agreement, but loopholes will be exploited without mercy." "I'll keep that in mind," Zavaro said wryly, "if we're still alive at the end of the day."
"First things first," said Gwydion. "Now that you're both awake, I am no longer bound to conduct myself as a guest."
"Understood," Rygovax rumbled. "We appreciate the gesture."
"I didn't do it out of kindness."
Gwydion turned from the computer to face them.
"I just needed time to review the data." He frowned. "Before we continue, I need to know, why are you here?"
"We came to get help,"
Zavaro told him. "Why?" The god's eyes pierced the Zokar.
"Planet Zievra has years left, and your people are being evacuated. Why risk coming here if it's not an emergency?"
Zavaro exchanged a look with Rygovax. Rygovax nodded. Zavaro spoke.
"My family is not being evacuated."
Gwydion made an encouraging motion.
"My people are not well loved. The Hive Mother is saving who she can, but there aren't many places we can go. My family will be left behind."
His antennae dropped.
"Zingna has enough Majin to sustain adult Zokar, but the hatchlings, my children will be dead in months if nothing is done."
Gwydion nodded, face devoid of emotion. He pointed at Rygovax.
"And you?"
The Stonvar raised his head. Flame puffed out of his mouth.
"Zavaro is my friend."
Gwydion nodded again. He disappeared.
"All right."
His voice spun Zavaro around. The god was back in his leather chair.
"I've considered your request. I have good news and bad news."
"You contacted Morgan?"
Rygovax guessed.
"You know what's happening to the Majin?"
Zavaro hoped. A troubled look passed over the god. Zavaro's scythes twitched.
"You caused what's happening to the Majin?"
"No, yes, and no," said Gwydion. He frowned. "At least, not me personally." He leaned forward. "Do you know why Earth was quarantined?"
"No,"
said Rygovax. "We told them a secret," said the god. "A secret so terrible your leaders will do anything to keep it contained."
"What secret?"
Zavaro asked. His voice was grave. "The humans have banished their gods."
Rygovax scowled at Gwydion.
"That's not funny."
"I'm not laughing," the man replied.
Zavaro's antennae twitched.
Gwydion, Aren't you a god? You're sitting right here.
They didn't get rid of us all. Gwydion leaned back. A handful were allowed to stay. Forced, actually. It's our job to deal with things the mortals can't handle. Outsiders, gods trying to breach the veil. His eyes narrowed at the two of them, and trespassing alien wielders. But the rest, the Tuatha, the Aesir, they're gone. Their realms have been dimensionally separated from Gaia, and their ability to influence the mortal world has been greatly reduced. Rygovax was staring at the man. Gwydion met his gaze. The Stanvar shook his head slowly.
No, it's not possible.
That word doesn't apply to humans, Rygovax, Gwydion chided. You should know that already.
How?
Rygovax asked. Zavaro echoed the sentiment. Banish the gods? He'd never heard of such a thing.
Why?
The why is simple, said Gwydion. Not all deities are benevolent. A lot of pantheons were vicious, petty bastards.
That's true everywhere,
Rygovax noted. Yes, Gwydion agreed, but the humans actually did something about it. Arthur Pendragon led the charge, with help from Morgan and his sisters. They enlisted the aid of everyone they could. Odin and Yahweh took to the cause the quickest, but within a few years half the deities of the world were working to raise the veil.
Arthur?
Rygovax widened his eyes.
You mean?
I mean your people's destruction of Camelot was a small part of a much greater war, Gwydion told him. Half the gods and most of the world tried to stop the veil from rising. It was a very near thing, but we got it done.
That's...
Zavaro scoffed. It was ridiculous, insane, impossible. Then again...
Wait, is that why Gaia's Majin is so low? And Mars?
Mars? Gwydion frowned. He appeared at the bridge computer and scanned the fourth planet. Huh. Didn't know about that.
You did this,
Zavaro hissed. The realization lit a fire in the Zakar. His scythe arm glowed as he pointed it at the man.
You killed my world! Zavaro,
Rygovax warned. Zavaro ignored him. He leapt, scythe arms extended. He stopped in midair. The god regarded him with mild annoyance. Calm down, said Gwydion. Your world's not dead. He waved a hand. Zavaro dropped to the floor. That's the good news, actually. The veil was designed to shunt all but a trickle of Majin to the realms of the divine. It's only supposed to be doing that to the earth. But that thing in Constantinople must have knocked something loose. Once it's fixed, your Majin levels will go back to normal.
You can fix it?
Zavaro froze. His heart stuttered in his thorax. We can, Gwydion confirmed.
How long will it take?
Asked Rygovax. I can't say for sure, said the man. He scratched his head. If my calculations are correct, it's a simple fix, but it will take a lot of juice. I'm going to have to call in some help. At a guess, he shrugged. 2 weeks, maybe 3. 3 weeks. Zavaro's legs gave out. His exoskeleton thudded as he sprawled to the deck. 3 weeks.
Thank you,
the Zakar whispered. His children would live.
Oh, Hive, thank you.
Don't thank me, said Gwydion. We caused the problem, so we have to fix it. It's not just a matter of saving your people. Majin, magic, it's what keeps the outsiders outside. Letting the veil take too much will be a very bad thing.
What's the bad news?
Rygovax asked. The bad news is that the veil is only part of the problem. Gwydion crossed his arms. It's siphoning Majin, but it's not why your magic is acting up.
That's your fault too,
Rygovax accused.
Isn't it?
Maybe, Gwydion admitted. I don't know, but I have a theory. Most humans aren't strong enough to be wielders, but we're all connected to the vast. Human belief can fuel an ascension, create a god. Enough belief might be able to change the laws of nature."
"Why does that matter?"
asked Rygovax.
"Most of your gods are gone."
"Exactly," said Gwydion. "No gods, few miracles, and precious little magic. So little that most humans don't believe in magic at all."
"Don't believe in—"
The idea shocked Zavaro out of his reverie.
"That's ridiculous. You might as well tell me they think Gaia is flat."
"It's not as crazy as it sounds." Gwydion gestured at the scry screen. "You've scanned the planet. It's practically a dead zone. For you, Majin is a fact of life. Most mortals don't even know the word." He scratched his head again. "Most human cultures are science-based now. Physics only. A lot of them don't believe in gods, let alone magic."
"But they're connected to the vast,"
Rygovax protested. "They don't know that," Gwydion told him. "It's all subconscious. I think that's the problem. I think their unbelief is functioning like a low-grade spell, one being cast continuously by hundreds of millions of people. Religious folk are counterbalancing for the gods, but magic? Not so much."
"Can you fix it?"
Zavaro asked. Gwydion was already saving the universe from the Veil. What was one more thing? "No idea," the god admitted. "But that's a problem for later. I've still got you two to deal with."
"Very well."
Zavaro climbed to his feet. His children would live. His life was a small price to pay.
"I'm ready." "Make it quick," said Rygovax, "and tell Morgan her mother was a hamster."
"I will tell her no such thing." Gwydion smiled. "Prepare yourselves."
"Mind if I ask a question first?"
asked Rygovax.
"What happened to the monsters?"
"The monsters?" Gwydion shrugged. "The same thing that happened to your people."
"Humans with pointy sticks?"
"Humans with pointy sticks," Gwydion confirmed. The Stonvar chuckled. Zavaro chuckled too. So Gaia really had been a Class 12 Deathworld. A mundane surviving such a place was a miracle, but the humans had done more than that. They'd banished the gods, killed the monsters. They'd dominated their planet so hard it wasn't even a Deathworld anymore. Or maybe it was. It was still full of humans after all. A species even Rygovax feared. Zavaro could see why. He would pray fervently to never meet one again. "Now hold still," said the god. "This will be unpleasant." Light burst forth from the deity. The pressure of his aura once again crushed Zavaro's soul. Gwydion laid a hand on each of them. His voice thundered. "This curse I lay upon you. No other will know you came to Gaia. What you have learned this day will never be shared. Not in word or thought or deed. Not in death or in life. This secret you will keep for all time." The pressure vanished. The light remained. A glowing Gwydion smiled at Rygovax and Zavaro. "You have done me a service, so I spare your lives." The smile widened. "If you come back here, I will kill you."
"We won't,"
Rygovax promised.
"Thank you, Lord Gwydion."
"It's just Gwydion." Gwydion snapped his fingers and disappeared. Rygovax and Zavaro looked at each other. Zavaro wanted to ask if any of that really happened, but he couldn't. Nor could he ask if Gwydion was really gone. An alarm snapped his attention to the scry screen. A ship was approaching. A Stonvar patrol vessel. A second alarm sounded. The ship was hailing the breath of Majin. Zavaro opened a channel.
"Hello, yes?"
"Attention, vessel," a stern voice intoned. "This is Hylovax of the Stern Protector. You are near a forbidden zone. Please state your purpose." Zavaro and Rygovax shared a look. Zavaro answered.
Stern Protector, this is Zavaro of the Breath of Majin.
He tried to ask the computer where he was. The computer's navigation system told him he was in his home system, inside a star. Gwydion must have done something to it.
I've got some kind of navigation malfunction. I don't know where we are. You're half a light year from the quarantine zone around Gaia,
Hylovax told him.
And if you're lucky, I'm running a Truth Seeker spell. That sounds suspicious as Garthna. Are you planning to enter the Forbidden Zone? Absolutely not,
Zavaro said honestly.
Even if it wasn't forbidden, I heard it's a Class 12 Deathworld.
Maybe 13,
Rygovax added. The Stonvar shuddered.
The further we can get away from that place, the better.